The courtroom smelled of disinfectant and old paper. Sterile, impersonal, unforgiving. My aunt, Diane Whitmore, stood tall at the witness stand with her right hand raised, eyes fixed on the judge as if staring down fate itself. "My niece is unfit to be a guardian," she declared. Her voice carried a sharp edge, honed by years of practice in family feuds. "She isolates our mother. She changed the locks. She forced her to sign a deed." Judge Marion Caldwell of the Orange County Superior Court leaned slightly forward, her expression unreadable, gavel resting just inches from her hand. Aunt Diane's attorney slid a slim stack across the green felt, an immaculate grant deed with a shiny notary seal accompanied by a few neatly printed text message screenshots where my name supposedly urged a quick sale. The pages gleamed under the fluorescent lights, staged to look inevitable. Behind me, my brother Miles Whitmore twisted the straps of his backpack over and over. He's 22, brilliant with timetables and terrified of sudden change. He also happens to be on the autism spectrum. 6 months ago, after our grandmother's minor stroke, the court had appointed me as his probate guardian. Since then, I'd moved back into Grandma's old Anaheim bungalow, living between her worn recliner and a cluttered pill organizer, trying to keep two fragile worlds from collapsing. The judge turned to me. "Ms. Cole, do you have a response?" My throat was dry, but my voice didn't break. "I do, Your Honor. First, I respectfully request status quo. No transfers, no entry to the house, until this court reviews the evidence." My aunt's painted lips curved in a faint smile. My cousin, Tessa Whitmore, smirked from the gallery. I kept my breathing even, my palms steady on the table. You don't sprint on a tightrope, you anchor first. Inside, though, a storm rattled. My stomach knotted with betrayal. How had we fallen from Sunday dinners and birthday parties to forged deeds and restraining orders? I pressed the thought down. The courtroom wasn't a place for grief. It was a place for survival. After Grandma Evelyn Whitmore's stroke, the house began speaking in lists. Bills slid from neat stacks into soft avalanches. I color-coded everything. Blue for hospital invoices, yellow for utilities, pink for the mortgage that no longer existed but still sent letters out of habit. I taped a daily schedule to the fridge at eye level for Miles Whitmore. Breakfast, meds, job training, speech therapy with Grandma. Silence became my strategy. I stopped answering relatives how much is in her savings, and is the roof really paid off? Not because I didn't trust anyone, but because I trusted how quickly a family turns curiosity into entitlement. In our world, a quiet room fills fast, with speculation first, then paper. I replaced the roof when the winter rains whistled under shingles. I changed the gas valve when the pilot light hiccuped. I crawled under the sink, cutting away cracked PVC that wept at elbows. I didn't post about it. I didn't announce it at Thanksgiving. I just folded the receipts into a manila envelope labeled, "Things you fix when you love people." At night, when Miles read the checklist out loud, meds, floss, lights, sleep, I listened to his cadence reknit itself after a day of surprises. He likes trains because the tracks tell the future. I tried to be a track, but even tracks need signals, gates, warning bells. What I didn't plan for was Diane Whitmore mistaking our privacy for an invitation to take the whole crossing. Aunt Diane's attorney handled the papers like a stage magician, palms flat, gestures economical, eyes daring the audience to blink. The grant deed gleamed under the fluorescence, its notary seal catching light like a coin. Next came the text message screenshots, my name above gray bubbles urging a quick sale before prices dropped. Something felt off. The font breathed a little too much between letters. The line spacing sprawled like it had been told to relax. Real messages carry the inertia of the device they live in. Timestamps, delivery marks, metadata that behaves like gravity. These looked like souvenirs of a conversation, not the conversation. Behind me, Miles' hands worked the backpack straps into ropes. "Can we go home?" he whispered, the words brushing the back of my neck. "Not yet. I said, covering his fingers, feeling the churn of his pulse, a river pressed into skin. We still have to do something for Grandma. I pictured Grandma on June 12th in her recliner by the window. The speech device therapists had left, one syllable balancing on the next like toddlers on stepping stones. The idea that she'd tracked legal clauses and property transfers that day was a cruelty dressed as paperwork. I let the anger move through me, then out of me. Anger flares, evidence holds. Your Honor, I said, rising from my chair, every muscle taut. I call Rosa Mitchell, supervisor at the Orange County Clerk Recorder, and Jenna Park, the notary public whose seal appears on the deed. The double doors opened with a groan. Ms. Mitchell entered first, gray hair pulled into a severe bun, badge gleaming on her blazer. Beside her walked Miss Park, cradling a black, hardbound notary journal with softened corners, the kind of book that bore silent witness to hundreds of transactions. They raised their hands, swore the oath, and took the stand. The room stilled in that peculiar way it does before a glass shatters. Even the fluorescent lights hummed louder. I'd like to examine the notary journal entry for June 12th, I requested. Ms. Park opened the journal with a practiced motion. She flipped to the date. The page was blank. A void. She pointed instead to an entry 7 days earlier. Same seal, serial number, but for a loan package signed by someone else entirely. Judge Caldwell leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Explain. Ms. Mitchell's voice was steady, but the gallery leaned in as if they'd all felt the ground shift beneath them. Under California law, a notary must maintain a daily sequential journal. Each entry records date, type of document, signer name, ID, and signature. There is no entry for Evelyn Whitmore on June 12th. The seal embossed on this deed belongs to a different transaction, a week earlier. A murmur spread through the benches. Aunt Diane shifted in her chair, her polished composure cracking at the edges. And the signature? Judge Caldwell asked. Ms. Mitchell lifted a lemonaded comparison. We examined the signature on this deed against Mrs. Whitmore's bank card and hospital intake forms. The strokes don't match, not even close. Miss Park spoke next, her voice firm. On June 12th, I was notarizing documents at St. Jude Medical Center from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. My badge logs confirm my entry and exit. It would have been physically impossible for me to be at the Whitmore residence for a heartbeat. The silence was heavy enough to crush. Then the gavel tapped, once, soft but final like the drop of a stone, and my chest loosened. Just slightly. The truth had surfaced, but my aunt's eyes told me she wasn't finished. Not yet. Miss Cole, Judge Marion Caldwell said. Any additional evidence? Yes, Your Honor. My voice landed cleanly. I connected my laptop to the court's monitor. The doorbell camera feed blinked alive, June 12th, 10:17 a.m. The foyer appeared in that fisheye honesty cameras prefer, no flattery, no angles. The door opened. Diane Whitmore and Tessa Whitmore stepped in with a tote bag, scanning the living room as if they'd rented time in our lives. No notary followed. No briefcase. On the couch, Grandma Evelyn lifted her head toward the lens and tried the device. Hello? The sound was soft and heroic. Our speech-language pathologist is present, I said. She'll testify that on June 12th, Mrs. Whitmore lacked capacity to understand complex legal documents. Opposing counsel stood. Objection. The text messages demonstrate no mile on Mission 10. Jumpin', do they? I asked, keeping my hands still on the table. Or do screenshots without native device exports, database paths, or hash values demonstrate a story? I listed what was missing like items on a grocery receipt. They had images. We had a chain of custody. I added one more cut. The recorder's index shows no record of this deed being accepted for recording, so even if a piece of paper exists, it has no effect against third parties. It's not of record. Aunt Diane stared at the embossed seal as if willpower could make ink attach more firmly. But paper is honest in one way. Dust doesn't stick to real ink. It only settles where the pen never truly touched. I looked back. Miles had stopped braiding his straps into worry. His face, always a weather vane for the room, had turned from storm to overcast, which for us counts as sunlight. "Your Honor," I said, standing. "Not grand, just steady. I'm not here to put anyone in jail. I'm here for a line. A visible, defensible line." I laid out the year like tiles. The repairs. The late fees I swatted before they accrued interest. The medication color codes. The food log pinned with clothespins to a corkboard Grandma could touch and read. Wednesday was speech therapy. Friday was the grocery run. Sunday afternoons, Miles and Grandma played dominoes until the sunlight leaned truly gold across the kitchen table. The speech-language pathologist testified with clean sentences. On June 12th, Mrs. Whitmore could not process legal concepts or weigh consequences. Any signature that day would be non-knowing. Opposing counsel did not ask for a break. The request died somewhere between the notary journal's blank date and the doorbell's timestamp. In the quiet that followed, I understood something I'd been postponing. Silence had protected us until it invited other people to narrate our lives. Boundaries weren't hostility, they were literacy. They told the story correctly. The gavel fell. The sound didn't crack like thunder. It thudded, workmanlike, unavoidable. "The petition to remove guardianship is denied," Judge Caldwell said. "The court issues an elder or dependent adult abuse restraining order against Diane Whitmore and Tessa Whitmore for 6 months. The court appoints a neutral, temporary conservator of Mrs. Whitmore's estate, pending capacity review. No contact with Miles Whitmore without Miss Cole present. Status quo on the residence. No entry, no transfers, no change of possession, pending further hearing." Aunt Diane's spine softened, as if someone had quietly taken out the stays of a corset. Tessa stared at her phone like it could reboot the afternoon. I didn't feel victorious. Victory suggests a banner and a song. This felt like a knot loosening underwater. We drove home in a light rain that pasted eucalyptus leaves to the windshield. The entry mat kept a brown crescent of dried mud from someone's shoes. I lifted it, swept the grit into a dustpan, and set it back so it lay perfectly flat. Miles tested the new deadbolts. 1, 2, and counted them twice for luck. Grandma breathed evenly in her recliner, the oxygen concentrator purring like a cat that forgives but doesn't forget. I opened a spiral notebook and wrote 3 lines. "Truth needs a process. Family without truth hurts the gentlest first. Today, we made room to breathe." I turned out the lights. The bungalow exhaled a long, ordinary breath. Not justice as punishment, but justice as putting things back where they belong so that people, fragile, stubborn, beloved, can live in their own house again.